The new east-west housing corridor is looking to incorporate an AT pathway. This is the first time in the history of Summerside that a new street is being designed with AT in mind. We certainly applaud and congratulate and are really enthusiastic that this is happening. So, in our mind, let's do it right the first time. Let's base this new AT pathway on best practices, on what is working. And what better way than to look at the Greenwood Drive AT pathway and take the lessons that we have learned from there and to apply that to the east-west connector. So there are three key questions that each of us need to ask ourselves as we begin this presentation. And if you answer yes to these questions, then please really pay attention to this presentation, as there's some key changes that Safe Summerside would like to see. The first question is, will there be new intersections created the result of this new corridor? The second question, will there be streets and subdivisions connected to this corridor? And the third question, is there going to be more housing and more population growth living around this corridor? And if you answered yes to these questions, then it's time to pay extra careful attention, I guess. First, I want to thank the city for quickly responding to some previous concerns that we have had. On the March 23rd council meeting, we addressed the issue of the storm drains. Okay, the storm drains that were placed parallel to the flow of traffic when they should have been perpendicular. Otherwise, it would have serious results of a tire being lodged and you going head over shoulders. We also addressed the issue of width of the Greenwood. It was below the minimum standards. As we can see, the minimum standards are 7.9 foot, and this was less than 6. And we can see, according to the City of Summerside's own document, two documents actually draft, that this is below their minimum standard, as well as they're saying 2.4 meters, which is again 7.9 feet. And the city went to work. They increased the width of the Greenwood Drive AT pathway, and now it looks like this, and now the minimum standard has been met. So the core of this presentation is to highlight directional versus unidirectional pathways. Basically like Greenwood Drive, which is bidirectional, 2 lanes on the same side, versus unidirectional, which acts sort of like a shoulder of the road in which it travels with the flow of traffic. So just to review, this would be considered best practice. You got traffic here, we got the bollards and the concrete. We have a planter if we so wish, adds more protection and a buffer, and the parking is here. So and there's no jarring of the doors of the AT drivers, etc. Here's another view here, and what I really want to illustrate here is look at this whole circle, this triangle visibility here. We can see that as even a motor vehicle comes into the AT lane and gets into the traffic lane, that there's no obstruction. We can see that the AT lane provides an extra visibility, not only for the cyclist or for the AT user, but also for the motoring public in the city where there's shrubs, etc., that are blocking the sight lines and are causing accidents, and this would eliminate that issue as well. So the key reason why we are recommending unidirectional pathways and not bidirectional pathways is contraflow traffic. And there is no better way to explain contraflow traffic than to look at Greenwood Drive. Let's just put us in vicinity so we know where we're at. The volleyball courts are here and the dome's on this side. We have the turf field and the skate park, and as well Elm Street Elementary. Now we have a car on Willow and they're looking to turn right. They want to go up Pope Road. The traffic is moving in the same lane that they're turning into, so there's absolutely no reason to even look at the other lane because they're not going to cross that traffic. They're just going to Pope Road, and so there's no reason. So they don't expect traffic to be coming into their lane because they're entering the lane that they want to go right and the traffic is moving right. The challenge with a bidirectional AT pathway is that's not all the traffic. Right now the AT pathway is moving contrary to regular flow of traffic. So this is contraflow traffic explained in detail using a real-life example of Greenwood Drive to illustrate the challenges. And this is what Safe Summerside is getting a lot of reports and feedback from our members is what's happening. And what I can say for myself, on parade day, this is what my bicycle looked like. I went to parade. I'm at this intersection. My bike looks like this, and the driver doesn't see me. The driver, I would guess, never looked because they didn't have to. Because they would not expect there to be any traffic coming towards them on that side of the lane. Unfortunately, I was there, and luckily I stopped before I was hit. Go a little further, here's the intersection, but there's other intersections as well, and with the new Business Commons Development Park, there'll surely be a lot of traffic. Once this is developed, it's going to be a pretty sweet complex for sure, and there'll be lots of traffic. And if we just look at the development that's occurring now and will occur in the future on Greenwood, it's going to increase the likelihood of traffic having to cross the street to get onto the bidirectional AT pathway. Now what we like to do is to focus in on two Montreal studies, and Montreal is important because it has the most bidirectional pathways than any province in North America. And right now, they are in a deep dive of reconsidering all their bidirectional pathways. They're finding, if you look at this map, areas of collisions, areas of concern, both perceived and actual, is that these are all bidirectional and they're all intersections. And this is where the risk is. This is what the concerns are. So the results of this study is bidirectional pathways are more dangerous at intersections because of contraflow movement. In this, and it's not only with motor vehicles, but it's also with AT users themselves. The primary design intervention is to create single lane unidirectional cycle tracks. In 2013, the Transportation Research at McGill also did a study. It talked more towards perception of the AT users themselves. What's interesting to highlight here is that the bidirectional cycle tracks were 33% viewed those as being more risky at intersections. They viewed bidirectional cycle tracks as more dangerous than just having paint on the road. And recently, as of just a few days ago, Montreal is putting back a bike lane that it tore out just 3 years ago. The bike lane that they tore out or that they removed was a bidirectional on a street. So right now they're going to put in unidirectional to eliminate all of the contraflow traffic movements. The final study that I'd like to talk about today is the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, and that some protected bike lanes are leaving people more vulnerable. This was a 2019, based out of New York and Portland, both cities with lots of cycling lanes. The challenge is, though, in both these cities that the cyclist deaths have increased by 25%. And 777 killed in crashes just in 1 year. So they identified factors such as the number of driveways and intersections and two-way traffic. So the bidirectional again. The risk of a crash or fall in a two-way protected bike lane at street level is much higher than that of a major road. So a major road carries its own risk, but then if you put a bidirectional at an intersection, it carries more risk. That is what that quote means. And one-way protected bike lanes differed little from the major roads in terms of injury risk. So there was really no difference using a one-way protected. So it was better than a bidirectional. And the final quote is two-way protected bike lanes alongside two-way traffic add complexity as turning vehicles need to monitor both oncoming traffic and two-way bicycle traffic in the bike lane. So again, let's move away from the bidirectional. Let's look at the unidirectional. When there are intersections, for example, the Bay Walk, there's no intersection, so it's bidirectional. It works very fine. If it had intersections, a different story. And if we travel to Charlottetown, we see those corridors that go from Cornwall to Charlottetown. Those cross very few intersections. So bidirectional on one side, wonderful, inspiring, it's recommended, sure, but not when they're crossing intersection. Finally, just can we reconsider? We're looking at a multi-use path at 3 meters, and I again applaud the city. 3 meters is the desired width, and so can we reconsider? Put in 2 unidirectional AT pathways at the desired width. So there it would come in at 1.8. It does mean an extra 0.6 extra meters. if we're looking at other lessons that we can learn from Greenwood, this is a key lesson. Right here we have Greenwood and Notre Dame, Greenwood and Water Street. We have 2 times that we need to cross the street. However, what's happening is we actually have created 4 different street crossings. So what this results in, we double the risk. So we go from crossing the street twice to crossing a street 4 times. So we double the risk of collisions. And it also creates a caught in the middle effect. So in larger groups, this is what it would look like. And for myself, I bicycle with a group of 15 children. So it would look like this as we're crossing the street. So we would be in both intersections waiting. We'd wait for one to clear before we can actually move. And so we're blocking intersections, and the feeling of having children caught in limbo, caught in the middle of the street, is pretty unnerving for me. Something needs to be changed. And at our public meeting we held to discuss this, there was a family of 6 who also travel quite a bit. They've traveled quite a bit in the summer, for the summer in Summerside, and they find this particular intersection really challenging because where do they put their rig? Where do they put the rig so they can haul their family? They can take their children out. They can take their family. They don't all fit on that small curb. So how can we do this? So in terms of solutions, one is we just create a new unidirectional on the west of Greenwood Drive. I know that sounds just unthinkable. However, bidirectional is not best practice, and I really hope that I've illustrated the concerns that this has created. So what we're looking at, the L intersection, we already have 810 that's already paved. 810 meters are already paved. And of the remaining 960, it already has 6 feet of gravel adjacent to the road. So no more digging, just lay down the pavement and we're good. The second solution is we already have a sidewalk that goes from Notre Dame to Water. However, let's utilize the other portion. We actually have enough room to keep the sidewalk and add a lane. This really would have made sense to have done this in the first place, because we don't want the L section. This would have been also more cost effective than putting down a bidirectional on the west side of this area. And in terms of more intuitive and getting rid of the L section, this would have been the preferred choice if we maintain the bidirectional. The third option is to create diagonal crosswalks. Instead of crossing twice, we cross once. However, in crossing once, we still require all the traffic to stop. And certainly at the public meeting we held, there wasn't very much belief that this would be the best option, and it could be just as risky as well. And I would just go as far to say there's only been one time I think Summerside's had such a diagonal crosswalk, and it's been at the Willow Northumberland intersection. And as we can see that it's changed from that, I guess, diagonal crosswalk to a crosswalk that's just one crosswalk. Another issue that we can take as a learning opportunity is the Greenwood and Willow Avenue. Now, I've already talked about the contraflow traffic. Now, again, very serious, and I hope we've done a good job to illustrate what contraflow traffic is and how it is a concern in a bidirectional AT pathway. However, there's also a second issue with this intersection, is the angle of transition from on-street to off-street. There's a challenge there. So if we measure both angles, now taking into account this is done just by a computer, it's not done on site, and we're not civil engineers by any means. However, here's the angle. So if you're looking at the straight, it's looking at 180, and what we've calculated, which is probably plus or minus for sure, because again, we don't have the tools to be out there on the roads and doing them ourselves, but we got 116. So this really illustrates that when you're coming down, as I was, and as the cyclists are, that you're literally pushing yourself into traffic. So this angle pushes the AT traffic into the motor vehicle lane. And what happens is this is a risk of collision. This is not a good recipe. So in terms of this solutions, again, we have some solutions. One, Again, we're going with the unidirectional. I know it's a theme, but that is one solution, best practice that can get it done. The second one is move the curb to align. So we need that curb to align, so we get rid of the angle. If neither one or two are options for the city, the third one would be signage and paint. Although it doesn't protect, it does help to educate. So again, we have this. By painting it, okay, so we need to clearly identify that this is a protected zone, that this is an AT pathway, and that would help bidirectional, if that's what we're going with here. Add a stop bar and stop here paint. It's done elsewhere in the city, and it certainly needs as a reminder. And the third thing is we got to add signage that says to look both ways when you're approaching, that you have two-way crossing, it's two-way traffic. It helps. Now, granted, you know, the bar, the paint won't be seen at nighttime. The signage will only be seen if there's a light there. And again, it's as we've often said, like paint and signs don't protect, but they certainly serve a good way of education, and it may go a little way to help. There also seems to be what we believe some right-of-way issues on this street. So if we're looking at Greenwood and Notre Dame, so traffic goes east to west, and the stop should be here because this is not the flow of traffic, so the AT pathway should stop there. That's our understanding, the correct use of right-of-way. On Greenwood and Willow, which is consistent with every intersection or parking lot, etc. So not only intersections or parking lots have the same rule of the AT, is that even though the right-of-way is north-south, so traffic goes up and down Greenwood Drive, what we have here, we have a stop. So the AT traffic come to a stop, much like a stop sign. They stop, so they don't have the right-of-way. That's what the signage is telling us, and we don't believe this is consistent with proper rules of the road, because if this is a shoulder per se without an AT pathway, a shoulder with, say, a cyclist on that, they would have the right of way to continue. They would not have to stop and yield to traffic that's turning in this manner. So this, we would recommend, is not an appropriate use of the right of way. That this should not be a stop for the AT traffic. The AT traffic, as well as the traffic traveling, all traffic traveling north to south, have the right of way, and the traffic coming, in this case from Willow, they're the ones that need to stop. In summary, I hope I've done a decent job to explain the inherent challenges with a bidirectional AT pathway when many intersections are considered. Again, here's what the city is proposing. A 3-meter bidirectional pathway, and it occupies a total of 19.7 meters of the available 30 meters. Now for Safe Summerside, here are our recommendations. We would add a 1.8 meter on each side for a bidirectional. We will increase the grass buffer by 0.5 of a meter on each side. More of a buffer between the AT traffic and the motor vehicle traffic is best practice. We will also add another buffer between the AT pathway and the sidewalk. Again, best practice, because we don't want pedestrians to get hit by, let's say, speedy e-scooters or speedy e-bikes. We want to have that separation built in. So that brings the total usage that we would use under our plan to be 21.5 meters, which is a 1.8 meter increase from what the city has recommended. This difference seems definitely doable, since there's a total of 30 meters right away of width that is available. So we respectfully submit this to the city staff as well as the city council for their consideration, and encourage them to reconsider the bidirectional AT pathway and to build a unidirectional AT pathway instead. Thank you for your time.